I'm 76 years old, and I need to tell you about the woman I used to be. Not because she was special, not because her story is unusual, but because I watched her disappear piece by piece for a man who walked away the moment it suited him. I've been alone now for 8 years. He left when I was 68, just decided one Tuesday morning that he'd had enough, packed 2 suitcases, told me he'd been unhappy for years, and moved in with a woman from his book club, 39 years of marriage, gone in an afternoon, and the worst part, I wasn't even that surprised. I should start at the beginning. I met Richard when I was 23. He was 27, working at an accounting firm, already serious about his career. I was a secretary at a law office downtown, not much ambition beyond doing my job well and maybe having a family someday. He was confident, knew what he wanted, spoke with this certainty that made you believe him. I liked that about him. I'd grown up in a house where my father made all the decisions and my mother nodded along, and I suppose I thought that's just how things worked. My mother never questioned him, not about money, not about where we'd go on vacation, not about anything. She seemed happy enough. At least she never complained. So when Richard had strong opinions, I didn't see it as a warning sign. I saw it as strength. We got married in 1968, small wedding at the Methodist church. My dress was borrowed from my cousin Jean. Richard wore a suit he already owned. We had cake and punch in the church basement, and that was it. We couldn't afford a honeymoon. Richard said we needed to save for a house. That made sense to me. He had opinions about everything. What kind of house we should buy, what neighborhood, what car, how we'd arrange the furniture, what color to paint the living room. I didn't mind at first. He was smarter than me about those things, I thought. He'd gone to college. I hadn't. My family couldn't afford it, and back then it didn't seem necessary for girls anyway. So I deferred to him on everything. When I got pregnant with our first daughter, I quit my job. He wanted me home, said it didn't make sense for me to work when childcare would cost almost as much as I made anyway. He was right about the math. I see that now. But what I didn't see then was that it wasn't really about the math. It was about making sure I needed him. I was good at being small. That's what I tell myself when I look back. I was very, very good at it. When Richard came home from work, I made sure dinner was ready. Not just ready, timed perfectly so it was hot when he sat down. I learned early that if the pork chops were cold, he'd mention it. Not meanly, just a comment. Dinner's a bit cold tonight. And I'd feel like I'd failed somehow. So I got better. I'd watch the clock. I'd time everything just right. Pot roast at 5:30, chicken at 6. I knew exactly how long everything took. Our daughters learned to be quiet when Daddy was home. Not because he yelled, he rarely yelled, but he had this way of sighing when they were too loud, of looking up from his newspaper with this tired expression that said he'd been working all day and deserved peace. I'd shush them. Daddy's had a long day. Let's play in your room. Sarah was 5. Emily was 3. They'd tiptoe around him like he was something fragile. I thought I was being a good wife, a good mother, keeping the peace, making things run smoothly. I stopped calling my friends after a while. Richard never said I couldn't, but when I'd make plans for lunch or coffee, he'd ask what was for dinner that night, or mention that he'd invited his boss over next week and maybe I should stay home to prepare. He'd suggest things. Don't you think the house needs cleaning? Weren't you going to organize the garage? It was never an order, just a suggestion, just a reminder of what mattered more. My friend Carol stopped calling eventually. I can't blame her. I'd canceled on her 6 times in 3 months. I'd see her at the grocery store sometimes, and we'd chat in the frozen food aisle. She'd invite me to things. I'd say maybe. We both knew I wouldn't come. After a while, she stopped asking. I told myself it was temporary. Once the girls were older, I'd have more time. Once Richard made partner, he'd be less stressed. Once we paid off the house, things would ease up. There was always a once. The years blurred together. Carpools and parent-teacher conferences and school plays. I was there for all of it. Richard came when he could, but he was busy, building his career, providing for us. That's what I told the girls when they asked why Daddy missed Emily's dance recital, why he wasn't at Sarah's piano concert. He's working hard for our family, I'd say. We should be grateful. And I was grateful. I was. We had a nice house. We took vacations every few years. The girls had everything they needed. I just didn't realize that everything didn't include a father who was actually present, or a mother who had her own life. My mother died when I was 41, breast cancer. She was only 63. She'd been sick for 6 months before the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. Maybe 2 months left, they said. Maybe 3 if she was lucky. I wanted to spend that time with her. She lived 3 hours away, and I asked Richard if I could go stay with her. Take the girls out of school just for a bit. They were 12 and 10. They could make up the work. He said no. Said the girls couldn't miss that much school. Said he couldn't manage on his own. Said my sister was already there. Wasn't that enough? I went for weekends. Drove there Friday night after Richard got home. Drove back Sunday evening in time to make dinner and prepare for the week. I'd arrive exhausted. My mother would be thinner each time, weaker. We'd sit together and talk. She'd tell me stories about when I was little, about her own mother, about her marriage to my father. She never once told me she was unhappy, but I could see it in her face when she talked about all the things she'd wanted to do, travel to Europe, learn to paint, take a writing class. She'd said someday about all of it, and then someday ran out. My mother died on a Wednesday. I'd just been there that past weekend. She'd asked me to stay. Actually, asked me. Her voice was so weak I could barely hear it. Stay a few more days, she said. I told her I couldn't. I had to get back. Richard needed me. The girls had school. She nodded. She understood. That's what women like us did. We understood. I kissed her forehead and drove home. She died 2 days later. My sister called at 6 in the morning. I didn't make it in time to say goodbye. At the funeral, my sister held my hand and said, "At least you came when you could." But I knew I could have stayed. I just didn't. That guilt sat in my chest for years. Still does, actually. I'll be doing dishes or folding laundry, and suddenly I'm back in that hospital room, seeing her face, hearing her ask me to stay. And I said no, because Richard needed dinner on the table. The girls grew up. Both of them went to college. Sarah studied business. Emily became a teacher. They were smart, driven, independent, everything I wasn't. They both moved out of state for work. Sarah went to Boston, Emily to Denver. I don't blame them. There wasn't much keeping them here. Their childhood home wasn't exactly filled with warm memories. They'd call on Sundays. We'd chat for 20 minutes. They'd ask how I was doing. I'd say fine, ask about their lives. They'd give me the highlights. It was pleasant, polite. We didn't know each other really, not deeply. I'd raised them, but I'd been so busy managing Richard's moods and keeping the house perfect that I'd never actually connected with them. Richard and I were alone in the house, just the two of us. I thought maybe this would be our time. We could travel. I could finally take that painting class I'd always wanted to try. We could actually talk, get to know each other again. But Richard was busier than ever. He'd made partner years ago, but now he was managing partner. Longer hours, more responsibility, more dinners out with clients. I stopped asking to come along. He'd made it clear those dinners were business. Wives weren't invited. I spent a lot of evenings alone. I'd make myself dinner. Something simple, soup usually, a sandwich. I didn't see the point in cooking a whole meal just for me. I'd watch television, shows I didn't really care about. I'd read library books, romance novels mostly, stories about women whose husbands adored them. I'd go to bed early, 9 o'clock, sometimes 8:30. There wasn't any reason to stay up. Richard would come home at 10, sometimes 11. I'd hear him moving around downstairs, the clink of ice in a glass, the television turning on. He'd come to bed after midnight. We'd sleep next to each other without touching. I gained weight. Not a lot, but enough that my clothes fit differently. I'd stopped caring about how I looked. Who was I dressing for? Richard barely looked at me. He mentioned it once, asked if I was planning to do anything about it. I joined a gym, went 3 times and quit. I felt ridiculous there, surrounded by young women in matching outfits, their bodies tight and strong. I was 56 years old and invisible. I tried to tell Richard I was lonely, not directly. I was never good at being direct, but I'd mention that we never talked anymore, that we never did anything together. He'd say we'd plan something soon, after this big case, after this merger, after the busy season. There was always an after. I started volunteering at the library, just 1 afternoon a week, shelving books, helping people find things. It was something. It got me out of the house. Richard didn't notice. Or if he did, he didn't say anything. I found the emails by accident. I wasn't snooping. His computer was open on the kitchen table, and I needed to check the grocery store hours. There were dozens of them, from a woman named Patricia, friendly at first, book recommendations, then comments about how much she enjoyed talking to him, then flirty, then more than flirty. I sat there for 2 hours, reading through them. They'd had coffee, multiple times. They'd gone to a museum together, to lunch. She wrote things like, "I love how you see the world," and "I can talk to you about anything." He wrote back, told her she was intelligent, interesting, that he looked forward to their time together. When Richard came home that night, I asked him about it. Calmly, I didn't yell. I'd never been good at yelling. He said it was nothing, just a friendship. She was in his book club. She understood literature the way I never had. It was nice to have intellectual conversation. I apologized. Actually apologized for not being intellectual enough. He patted my hand and said it was fine. Not everyone was a reader. Not everyone had interesting thoughts about things. I felt grateful, relieved that he wasn't angry at me for looking at his emails. That's how far gone I was. 2 years later, he moved in with her, he told me on a Tuesday morning. I remember because Tuesday was trash day, and I'd just taken the bins to the curb. He was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee, 2 suitcases by the door. He said he'd been unhappy for a long time, that I'd become boring, that I never challenged him, never had opinions about anything that mattered. He said I'd let myself go, that I'd stopped trying. He said Patricia made him feel alive again. I stood there in my bathrobe, not knowing what to say. Every word felt true and completely unfair at the same time. He'd spent 40 years training me to be exactly what he wanted, small, agreeable, quiet. And then he left because I'd become it. I asked him if we could try counseling, if there was anything I could do. He said no. He'd already made up his mind. He'd already signed a lease on an apartment with Patricia. He said he'd been planning this for months, and I'd had no idea. The divorce was quick. He was generous with the settlement, I'll give him that. Guilt, probably. Or maybe he just wanted it done. I got the house, half his retirement, enough money to live on comfortably, and I was alone. That was 8 years ago. I see my daughters twice a year now, once at Christmas, once in summer. They fly in for a few days. We have nice visits, surface-level conversations. They're busy. They have their own lives, their own families. I tell them I understand. But I watch how they are with their children, and I see something I never gave them. They're present. They're loud. They laugh. They take up space. Their husbands help with dinner, do the dishes, change diapers, share the load. I'm proud of them for that. I am. But I also wonder what I taught them about marriage, about what a woman should accept. I hope they didn't learn it from me. I've had time to think these past 8 years, more time than I know what to do with. The house is quiet, too quiet. I leave the television on sometimes just for noise. I still make dinner at 6 o'clock, even though there's no one to cook for. Habit, I guess. And I keep coming back to the same thing. I disappeared, not all at once. So slowly I didn't even notice it happening. Every time I made myself smaller so Richard could be bigger. Every time I said yes when I meant no. Every time I canceled plans, swallowed my opinion, laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Every time I chose peace over truth, I became less and less and less until there was barely anything left. And then he left anyway. That's what I can't stop thinking about. I sacrificed everything, my friendships, my time with my mother, my own interests and desires and needs. I thought I was building a marriage. I thought I was being good. But you can't build anything on your own erasure. All I built was a space where I used to be. People say things to me now, well-meaning things. They say I should be grateful for my daughters, for my health, that I should enjoy this time, find new hobbies, maybe even date. I smile and nod. But the truth is, I'm 76 years old. I'm tired, and I'm running out of time to become whoever I was supposed to be. I don't know who that person is. I never got the chance to find out. I spent 50 years as Richard's wife, and now I'm just the woman he left behind. If you're young, if you're reading this or listening to this, I need you to understand something. The years go faster than you think. You assume there will be time later, time to stand up for yourself, time to say what you really mean, time to live the way you want to live, but later becomes never so easily. Oh, I thought I'd have time with my mother. I thought my marriage would last. I thought if I just kept being good and patient and small, eventually I'd be rewarded. I was wrong about all of it. You don't get those years back. You don't get to redo the moments you chose wrong. My mother is gone. My daughters are grown. My husband found someone else, and I'm here, alone in a house that's too big, trying to figure out how to fill the hours. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I made my choices. I lived my life. But if I could go back and tell that 23-year-old girl anything, I'd tell her this. Don't disappear for anyone. Not for love, not for marriage, not for peace. Take up space, have opinions, make noise, be inconvenient, be difficult, be yourself. Because the alternative is spending the end of your life trying to remember who you were before you erased yourself. And I can't remember anymore. I've tried. I sit here some nights and try to think about what I wanted when I was young, what I dreamed about, what made me laugh, and I can't find it. It's been gone too long. So I'm asking you, begging you really, don't be me. Don't wait for permission to exist. Don't make yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. It doesn't work. It never works. And when they leave anyway, and they might, you'll still have yourself. I don't have that. I gave it away piece by piece, year by year, and now I'm 76 years old and I'm running out of time to find it again. That's my story. That's my truth. I hope it means something to you. I hope you hear it, because I can't go back, but you still can.